Hi, everyone. Welcome to the P21 Training Podcast. My name is Al Hughes, and today's topic is the Operational Excellence Reporting. And in today's call, we're going to discuss and review how you access the InView screen, and from there, how you go to the Operational Excellence portal. We'll also show you where the SOP is that describes the purpose and general process behind the OpsX reports. Then we'll go into the actual report page for a specific branch, and we'll look at some of the unprocessed reports. We'll show you how to navigate around the page and do some various different tasks. We'll probably open up one or two of the most important reports that you need to be looking at every day. And we'll point out where the fields are that display your totals, your cost, your margins, and so forth. And towards the end of the call, we'll probably show some open order reports, maybe some inventory reports, or some various status reports, just very briefly, because I don't think we'll have time to go into all the reports, so we'll probably have a separate call that reviews some of the other less important reports. And in the end of this call, we'll show how to save the edits we did and how to move your actual report over to the processed folder. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and open up Internet Explorer. And when I open it, notice that it opens up the DXP homepage automatically. And if this is my first time going into InView, I could go up to the address in the top left field, and I could just type in the word InView, INVIEW. And it'll take me to the InView landing page. But I already have it saved on my favorites, so I'm just going to go ahead and click on InView. And this is the InView landing page. So from here, there's all kinds of different things we can do. But in today's training, we're going to talk about the reports. So the first thing I'm going to do, up in this horizontal black bar, I'm pointing to the Excellence Control Center, and I get a drop down when I do that. So I'm going to click on the first option, which is Operational Excellence. And that brings up my OpsX portal view. And on the left side, notice it shows all the regions within the company. And of course, if you were doing this, you would go to the region you're in and click on it, and then it would display all the branches in that region. And so we're going to do that in a second. But before we do, let me show you where this SOP is that describes all the reports. So once I get to where I'm at here, notice there's a management option right in the middle. And by the way, all of this different information is valuable information, and I think we've covered it on other training calls too. But we've got the playbook, the training manual, the OpsX guide, all kinds of good information out here that you can click on and review information in here. But what I'm going to do is today, I'm just going to show you this one SOP, and it's under the Management tab. And after I click on Management, I go to Reporting. And when I do that, this is the actual report, the OpsX reports. So I can click on that and open it. And notice that it shows me on the left side, alphabetically, it shows me the name of the report. To the right, it shows me what day of the week it comes out. So in this case, this one comes out every Friday, once a week. The second one comes out every Monday, once a week. The third report down here comes out daily. So it's formatted so that it not only tells you the name and when it comes out, but it tells you the purpose of the report, the action you might need to take to work it, and some various operational tips that can help you improve the report overall. So it's multiple pages long because they're listed alphabetically. And of course, the two most important reports that you look at are the daily invoice register and the profit exception report. So those are reports that we're going to go look at right now. And you can see right over here, this is the daily invoice register report. It comes out daily. It displays all the information that was invoiced on the prior day, and it shows your profit margins, the items, and all that kind of information. So that's probably one of the most important reports you can look at because it directly affects your bottom line, because everything you invoice to the customer on the prior day is on this report. So we'll go look at, I'm going to minimize this, but you should become familiar with this. And we're going to go ahead and go back and go in and actually look at some reports. So I'm going back out here. You can see where we were was in that management tab. But now I'm going to come up here and just go to a random region. We'll go to the North Central region. And we'll go to a branch that still has some reports left out there today. And we're not actually going to do their reports, but we're going to, all the way up into where I save it, we'll do those steps. So I can see the second one there. Let's just go to that one. And when I click on that, well, let me back up for just a second, because you can see that when I am in my region, it displays all my branches here. And if it's got blue going across it, that means that branch is done with their reports. If it's only blue halfway across, they've worked some of them and not all of them. And then on the far right, it shows that how many reports are still left that they have not worked. So this is just a gauge to tell us, you know, who's done, who's still working them. And early in the morning, a lot of these won't be done. And by the end of the day, most of them are usually done because everybody works them every day. So now I'm going to go ahead and click on Columbus then, and we'll go on in and look at their reports. And notice that all the reports are in the Excel format. And any day of the week, there might be 5 reports that come out, or there might be 8 reports, depending on what day of the week or what day of the month it is. The reports generally get generated and dumped into this portal at around 6 o'clock in the morning. And each manager is expected to work these every single day. Notice up at the top, it says unprocessed and processed. And the unprocessed is blue right now. That means we're looking at the unprocessed reports. After we work these, when we're done, they're going to move into the process folder and they're not going to appear here anymore. And so we'll show you how that happens. So the first thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and open up the most important report out here, and that's the invoice register report. So notice that when I click on it, I get an option here to read only or edit. I'm going to go ahead and say edit, even though I will escape out and not actually edit it in the end. Now notice it opens up now with all these lines showing, and the very first thing I do on large reports is I freeze the panes. So to do that, I highlight the next line that's below my headers, and I come up here to View, and I go to Freeze Panes, and I click the first option here. So that makes it so that as I scroll down, my header stays on the screen, and I can tell what each of the columns is. The next thing I do on this report is I scroll all the way to the bottom, because the bottom is where it shows me how many total dollars I invoiced yesterday at my branch. So on this particular one, it says we invoiced just over 15 grand with a cost of just over 10. So that's a margin of about 31%. And every manager probably has a pretty good idea what your average margin is every day. So that's why you come to the bottom first, because it's going to give you that first indication of whether everything that was invoiced yesterday was accurate or not. Because hypothetically, everything should be accurate that invoiced, but once in a while you might have a wrong cost or a wrong sell price on one of these. And if you go to the bottom and you see instead of 31%, it says 9%, you know something isn't right up above there. Maybe somebody put a wrong cost on, or maybe somebody did a credit. Maybe they were doing a credit and a rebill, and only the credit got through today and they didn't get the rebill in time, I should say yesterday. So at any rate, notice also there's red font, and the red font applies to any line that is 23% profit or less. And it would also apply if it's like 95% profit or more. And that's because if there's a bad unit of measure and you're making a 95% profit, you know something's wrong. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to talk about the column headings for just a second here. I'm going to scroll back up to the top. Of course, I'm going to just real briefly run through here that it's got the invoice number, the location ID, the invoice date, the sales order number, the job number, the customer ID, even the customer name, which sometimes I widen that out a little bit because that's important to me. And I also widen out the item ID because the item might make a difference. So it shows the taker, the item ID, the description, quantity, unit of measure, unit price, extended price, unit MAC, and extended MAC. And the MAC means moving average cost. So then we got the MAC gross profit. If it's rebated, there's a yes or no column below. And we'll talk more about all these after we get through them here. Then there's the COM cost, the extended COM cost, and the extended COM commission price. And over here to the far right, it just tells you if they manually overwrote it. It tells you the actual pricing library that this price came from, and the expiration date to that pricing library. The customer's PO number is in the AA column, and then the carrier and the carrier name and any notes. So what I'm going to do as a manager, of course, I went to the bottom first and I looked at my figures at the bottom to make sure that my overall profit was right. And then theoretically, I scroll back up through, and I'll tell you what I normally do. What helps if you're kind of new is to go to the Home tab and highlight a few of these columns yellow. So maybe I do my extended price yellow, maybe my MAC gross profit, and then my commission cost profit. And that just helps so that when I'm scrolling up through, I can easily identify the columns that are important to me. And all I'm looking for briefly here is a fairly high dollar extended price that's got a bad margin on it. And of course, if it's going to have a bad margin, it's probably going to be red in color. So you can see this one here is $825, but it's 21.33%. So, as a manager of a branch, I have a pretty good idea, theoretically, what we're supposed to be charging. And if I see one, like for instance, this one's 6% profit, but it's only $12. So that doesn't stick out to me real big. But if it had been a $10,000 sale at 6%, maybe I would have been more interested in that. Might be a mistake. And of course, I would look and see who the taker is. And I would highlight this line, and maybe I'd do it this way by highlighting it this way. And maybe I would add a note in here, and it would just depend on what the scenario is. But I could say you could type in anything you want in here, because the person who you send this to is going to see it, or it might be a reminder to yourself. But after you go through each of these lines, and of course, like I said, if you're just seeing small $18 orders, that's not a big thing. But when you see something that's multiple $1,000s and it's red font, you want to be sure to look over at your profit margin, see if anything was wrong with it, because this is everything that was invoiced yesterday. And if it's wrong, it needs to be credited and rebilled. And you're just looking for anything that sticks out. So keep in mind that generally speaking, all of your reports should only take about 10 or 15 minutes to go through each day. And a report like this, you can probably get through in just sometimes a matter of a few minutes. Because if you look at the bottom and everything looks good here, and you scroll back up through and you're just looking for low margins or anything that's a problem, within a few minutes you can tell that either, yeah, you did have a problem, or no, it looks pretty good. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just pretend this line 80 was a problem, and we'll pretend we typed in some notes over here that were in more detail. And I want to show you how you can save and send this to a user. So it's not your job to do the detailed investigation. You just look for something that looks out of the normal perspective, something that's sticking out like a sore thumb, and you send it to the person who keyed the order, and they can figure out if it needs to be corrected or not. So what I do if I'm sending this to them, I come up to File in the upper left and I click on File. Then I go to Share. Then I go to Email and Send as an attachment. And it takes this report that I've already highlighted yellow, it wraps it up into a nice little attachment and opens up my actual Outlook email. And I send it to that taker, and I put anything in here like, hey, would you look at this line that's highlighted? So I send it to him. After I send it to him, it puts me right back into the report again. And I'm done now. What I can do is, if I'm done and I want to move it to my process folders, I go over here and I select yes. And I'm going to change it back to no because I don't want to save it. But I just want you to know that if you're ready and you're done to move it to processed, you say yes, you click save up there in the top left, and then you go to the top right and you click the X and it closes it. Now I'm going to do that, but it's not going to save it because this isn't my report and I'm not going to actually work it. But theoretically, if I would have said yes in the top left and then saved it, this report would have disappeared and it would have moved into this process folder. So we're going to go look at the profit exception report here real quick, and then we're going to come back and look at the process folder. But let's do this. Let's open the profit exception report. I'm going to click edit. And before I open it, just remember, the last report we did, the invoice register, was everything we invoiced yesterday. So it's already complete. This profit exception report has a lot of the same columns, looks really similar to the invoice register report, but these are all open line items that are 23% or less profit. So I'm going to click OK here, and now it's going to open up. Again, you're seeing all the similar lines that we saw in that other report, including things like my MAC percentage, and I can go ahead and just highlight some of these. There's my supplier percentage. They're slightly different information, but pretty similar here. There's some of the more important columns, and I can even go to the bottom and see the totals there, but none of these have been invoiced yet. These are all open line items. And so it's called the profit exception report because we're trying to be proactive and we're trying to look here and see things that have a really low margin and say, hey, we got something wrong here. Let's catch this and fix it before we invoice it. So for instance, let's freeze the pane first, just like I did on yesterday. So I highlight the line right below the header. I come up to view. I click on freeze panes, and then I do that first option. So now I can scroll and you can continue to see the header panes there. And what I'm just looking for are things that have negative margins. So here's something that sticks out at me. And by the way, there's no red font on this report like there is on the invoice register, because everything on this report is below 23%. It's got to be 23% or less to appear on this report. Or, of course, above 95%. That'll appear here too. So on these, you can see the sell price is 0 on all these. So it's got a negative 100% margin. So maybe there's a good reason. Maybe it is, a sample or something or whatever. But maybe somebody needs to fill that in and hasn't done it yet. So I would highlight these horizontally, theoretically. And I might put a note in there somewhere. And by the way, if I want, I can just insert a column anywhere I want, like here, and I can add notes in anywhere I want in the middle of the page. I can do it right there. I add a note in, whatever I want to do. So again, these are not invoiced, so I'm looking for things that are potential mistakes or something that's doesn't have the right sell price or the right cost. I can see right here I've got one. It's some kind of a Conti belt or something maybe. And it looks like it's showing a sell price, but for some reason, the cost is higher than the sell price. So it's showing a negative profit. So it's very possible. Oh, and here's the answer to that one. You can see on the profit exception report, it shows a rebate column. So since we're getting a rebate, this displays that once it rebates, our margin is going to be much better. So it's showing a negative margin now, but when we process the order, it's going to go through with a better profit margin. And that's because our PO cost, our standard PO cost, is high, but when we process that sales order, it refunds or rebates the rebate cost on the face of the order. So that's why there's a rebate gross profit column on this one, and you might want to yellow that one too when you're first looking at it. So there's a column that says rebate yes or no. There's one that shows rebate cost. There's one that shows if you did a manual override. So a lot of the other columns are pretty similar to what was on the invoice register. But just keep in mind that in this case, you're seeing at the bottom it says a 17.91% margin, and it's 17.91 because most everything on here is below 23%. And you might see some that say higher than that, but this is the standard supplier margin is 33%, but the MAC is 6%. So it's if any one of these three columns is less than 23%, it'll appear on this report. So just to review one more time, the invoice register is everything that's already been invoiced, and we look at it first each morning, and if we find anything that's wrong there, it has to be credited and rebilled in order to be fixed. Then we come and look at the profit exception report, and these are open line items that have not been invoiced yet. And if there's a margin that's incorrect here, we want to do the save and send again, and I'll show you that one more time just to help get you familiar with it. But when we do the save and send, it helps us alert the taker who keyed this order, and they can dig into this and see if there's really something wrong. So, of course, I don't know anything about this branch or the customers or the margins they make on them, but the manager would be real familiar with that. And just theoretically, maybe he'll have 2 or 3 or 4 lines highlighted like I'm doing here. And, of course, there might be different takers on it. So he might put a note in here about check cost or something, or why is it at 0 sell price, or whatever he wants to do. And once he's done doing that, he's going to come up here like I did before for the save and send. So I go to File, I go Share, then I click on Email, and then I click on Send as an Attachment, and it rolls this whole spreadsheet with all the yellow already highlighted up into that email. And I can send it to multiple people if there's 3 different CSRs on this order. I can send it to all 3 of them. I can tell them anything I want to tell them in the body of it. And after I hit send and it goes off and sends to them, I'm right back in my report now. And usually I want to save these yellow markings because it's at least evidence I've reviewed the report. And any kind of questions or notes or things I wanted to highlight, I want to leave them highlighted so that if I come back and look at it at a later time, they'll be there. So again, in order to move it to the process folder in the top left, we select yes. Then we go and we click save up in the top left. And then we go to the top right and we X out of it. So again, I'm going to change my yes back to no again, because I don't really want to save it that way. And I'm going to X, and I'm going to say, no, I don't want to save it. So all these yellow markings, all the things I typed in there are going to go back away, and it's going to be out there just the way it was. So let's just take a second and let's look at the process folder now. Because like I said, if we work all these and say, yes, they move into the process folder, but there's already a lot of reports in the process folder. So let's go look at them. I'll just click on the process part. Now it shows each one of the different categories of reports is here. And if I want to go look at old invoice registers, there I have it right there. And I'm going to point to the arrow at the left. And when I click on it, there's 2018s and 2019s. I want to look at my 2019 report. So I click on it. And notice it starts in January. But normally I want to go with what was done yesterday first. So I go up to the modified one, and it's in ascending order. I want to change it to descending order. And if I change this often enough, eventually it seems like the system starts remembering it, and it starts bringing it up in a descending order after you've changed it several days in a row. So what I like is if I'm going to go back and look at reports, they're probably reports from the past week. So I don't want to see something from January. I want to see something from a couple days ago. And here they are. They're in the same Excel format. I could still go ahead and open them in the same way that I can open them when they're in the unprocessed folder. I can view them. All the notes I put on them are there. So that's what we just want you to be aware. They stay out there for at least a couple of years. They eventually get archived off to another area. And if I want to go back over to the unprocessed, I just click here again and it takes me back over to those open reports again. Now we're going to do another training session that's going to talk about some of the other reports. In that one, we'll show how to import a document. But right now, I want to talk for just a second about, in general terms, about some of these. So the GL root cause report, I'm going to go ahead and open that one up. And we all know that there's times where we cut a PO to a supplier and it might say $10 on the PO, but maybe the supplier bills us $10.14. And that's, we received in the PO already at $10. We're not going to change it to $10.14. The invoice comes and our accounts payable pays it because it's less than 10% more, or it's within whatever the variance is. So if they pay an invoice that's not the same cost as what we had on our PO, that's called a general ledger adjustment, and it shows up on this report. And you can see this one's just 2 cents. So normally when you go through these, you look in column F, and if it's a low amount, you just say yes up here in the top and save this and move on. But if there's something that's big, like $3,000, then you definitely want to research it. And you can see over here on the left, they say these are cost report issues. So that means it was from a PO. But sometimes, for instance, if you do a cycle count and you adjust out stock, it'll say inventory adjustment over here. And the write down will be specifically because you lost some inventory. For whatever reason, it wasn't there and you adjusted it out. Or maybe you adjusted it in and maybe it's a write up. And the same can happen if you do an IR or various, maybe a vendor hit you a restocking fee that you didn't know they were going to do and you didn't put it on your IR or something. So various reasons can come up where you might need to do a GL drill down. And so in the second training call we do, we're going to drill into some of these other reports and we're going to talk about them and we're going to do a GL drill down. But just briefly, since these are supposed to stay about 30 minutes long, I'm just going to real briefly talk about a few of these others. So keep in mind that the unconfirmed pick ticket report, this shows all current pick tickets out in your branch. And notice that it shows in column J, that's the important column, that's how many days old they are. So this one printed 26 days ago, this one 19 days ago. And theoretically, you know, you want to have, well, this looks like a pretty good report here. Once in a while, they'll age for 2 or 3 weeks, but maybe that's because somebody's going to come in at the end of the month and pick something up, or something's going to get delivered at the end of the month. But you don't want things to be aging 6, 7, 8 months out there, you know, but this looks pretty good because theoretically most of this stuff will either ship or get delivered within the first 1 through 6 days, you know. And if you start seeing something age here, you want to probably highlight it and do a save and send it to your warehouse manager, because maybe that warehouse manager or your shipping person, whatever, maybe that person shipped this stuff out 2 days ago, but they didn't confirm it in the shipping screen like they should have. Or maybe they know the customer came and got it and then they neglected to do the shipping step. At whatever reason, this is just a follow-up to make sure that the things that should have been invoiced yesterday or the day before get invoiced. And this report comes out every single day. So these are things that are allocated to a pick ticket, but they have not been invoiced yet. I'll go ahead and close that. And again, what you should do is you should look through that SOP that I showed early on, because it describes the purpose of each one of these reports. But just briefly, we're going to show you the transfer report here. The transfer report just shows all open transfers that are out there. And notice up in the first area here, it says inbound transfers. And down here, it says outbound transfers. So inbound ones are, most of them are coming from the DC, going to the branch. They've already printed at the DC. And in column H, it says date printed. And then in column I, the ship date. So we can see that these shipped in a good time frame, which was actually yesterday, which tells us they're en route to us. And then for outbound, these are things coming from our branch going out to somewhere. And if it doesn't say it's printed yet, then we know that even though this was requested yesterday, nobody's printed it, nobody's shipped it. So this might be one as a manager that I'd want to highlight yellow, and I might want to save and send it to my person because probably didn't print that transfer and probably doesn't know about it yet, you know. So, of course, the same would apply. We'd say yes to that after we did the save and send if we needed to, and then we'd save it. I'm going to leave it at no because I'm not going to save any of these. So that's a valuable report for multiple reasons. Let's look at this open direct report because this comes out every single day. And it's an important report because what you need to do, these are things shipping direct from the supplier to the customer. And now that we have Coupa implemented, and there was a learning curve for a while, but everybody should know that, especially on some of these that are getting older, there's probably an invoice in Coupa. So at some point, we're going to do a training session that shows how you go into Coupa and how you do a sort to look for invoices that maybe you're just looking for directs, maybe you're just looking for open invoices for your branch, but there's a filter in Coupa where you can find them. And if you've been around a while, you know that we used to use the AP to-do list, and you would take this report here and you would compare it with the invoices you find in the AP to-do list. Now you still take this report and you compare it with those invoices that come up in your filter on Coupa, and those would be open invoices that we need to still pay that show not received against. So this is there's a reason this report comes out every single day. It's because when you do a direct ship confirmation, you're billing a customer, and it's just like invoicing them. So between Coupa and this report, they would work in conjunction to give you the information you need to do the direct ship PO confirmation. So there's several other reports, but they're not in here now because a lot of them come out one day a week. So on our next training call, we'll probably go in and we'll talk about a few more others in detail. We'll probably do a GL drill down. We might even go into Coupa on the direct ship report and show you how to match up your open direct ship order with the Coupa invoice. I want to just point out that the P2 order price edit, we're not going to deal in that too much right now. On the second call, we might probably go into that. I think it depends on which branch you are as to how important that report is, but it's basically a report that gives information about what pricing library a price might have come from and whether we stuck with that price or went up or down. But this is a default library. It's not a specific library that we make for a specific customer. So at any rate, that pretty much gets to the end of the call for today. So just to reiterate a few different things, and that is that when you're coming in here, open up your Explorer and click on InView, which would be your favorite. If you don't have it as a favorite, type in the word InView. Then come up here to Ops Excellence, click on that, and then it's on the left side. Your regions are there. Click on whatever region you want to go to, and after you click on the region, then you click on the branch you want to go to. So thanks to everybody for attending today, and hopefully you got a lot out of it. And we will have another call where we talk about other aspects of the operational excellence reporting. Hey, thanks a lot, everybody. See you later.